Preparedness. By preparedness, I mean the preparations which one makes before something mildly important happens. So that could be some guests arriving, it could be some form of ritual, it could be some sort of game. Whatever it is, we take often preparations for that. And my thoughts on this were influenced by my experience in Nepal in particular, but also in China. Because when I went to Nepal and I was told that there was going to be some important ritual, some funeral ceremony or some saying goodbye to someone who was leaving for the army, and that there would be lots of events, dancing and feasting and so on. I looked forward to this and I turned up early at the place where this was going to happen. And I was often almost panicky because nothing seemed to be happening. There was no one around, there was no obvious sign of special awnings or symbols of any kind. And I sort of thought, well, I've come on the wrong day, or it's not going to happen. And if I asked someone, they'd say, oh yes, it's going to happen. It was often late because of this, but what tended to happen was sort of last-minutism. In other words, the ritual, supposing it was a shaman's ritual, the shaman would finally turn up with his bits and pieces, and then a whole lot of people would come in with some wood and some water and some rice and some alcoholic drink and other things, and put them together and assemble and make the event happen collectively, not through the preparations, but by working at it together. And I realized that this was an extremely effective way of actually getting a ritual done, because the actual process began with the preparations. You didn't prepare the event and then have it, as I've been taught mainly to do in my Western education. The preparations, putting things in the right place, bringing things together, collectively working, was part of the event itself. And later, when I ran parties in Cambridge for my students and so on, I began to stop rushing out a day before and buying all the drink and getting the food ordered and everything and arranging the room. I would leave it more or less to the end. What had to be prepared was prepared, but basically the first people who arrived, I'd say, right, can you give me a hand to go and get the wine, and can you give me a hand to move the furniture around and so on. And this bound us together, gave us a sense that we were actually all contributing to it. It was much more restful and it was much more effective. And this is something which I have to tell myself every time, because my natural inclination is to prepare well in advance, and you can waste an awful lot of time because the event doesn't occur, or it occurs in a different way at a different time. So last-minutism, which also I saw in China, I've often wondered why it is, but when organizing events with my Chinese colleagues, again, everything is left more or less to the last minute, and yet it works extremely well. I've organized big Chinese, UK cultural events, poetry and arts festivals in Cambridge, and very often nothing much happens until the last few days, even though it's a very big event. This, of course, galls with the people who have to do the catering or set aside the space and so on to a certain extent, and you have to conform with them. But it works pretty well. And the reason I give myself in the case of China is not that it's acting as a kind of together activity, as it is in Nepal, but that in China things are so busy and so many different things are happening at the same time that if you prepare too much in advance, bits will fall out of your plan anyway, and so you might as well wait till everything more or less is about to happen. See how the pieces on the chessboard are arranged, and then do the ritual. Don't do it too far in advance. And it does have the great advantage that you don't worry, as I used to, for days and weeks in advance of some major event. You just do it at the last minute. So relaxing about preparations, even things like holidays and your friends coming to see you, is something which slowly through my life I've learnt to do, because it will happen, and it may happen much better if there's an element of spontaneity and creativity at the last minute.